Welcome to another edition of the Dementia Care Partner Talk Show. Now, here's dementia care expert Teepa and your host, Greg Phelps.
Hello and welcome to the Dementia Care Partners podcast. I'm your host, Greg Phelps, and joining me once again is dementia care expert Teepa Snow. And Teepa, here's a story that's going to tug at your heartstrings. A 95-year-old man was recently evicted from his senior's home because he ran out of money. What's even worse is that it happened right here in Greater Vancouver. He's now living in the emergency ward out of the hospital. On the bright side, there's a crowdsourced fundraising effort underway to pay for a new care home. But here's the ask. What are we as a society doing wrong? Because we somehow seem to continue devaluing seniors like we're disposable.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting particularly, I don't know, painful, I think is the word for me, painful, to watch folks look at seniors as a burden and a challenge and where shall we put her? What are we going to do with him? These ideas that this person who's lived a life of often very involved in being helpful to others, building a company, doing things that had value. I mean, this guy, he got to 94. You don't get there without use of some resources. And it's like, gosh, so at 94, that was too much then, eh? The idea that we don't have a way to secure continued housing and care for people who've contributed, gosh, almost 100 years. I mean, all but about probably, I mean, I would suspect a good 60 of those were spent in service in some form or fashion. And to really not acknowledge or recognize, wow, our system is broken. It's truly broken because we don't see the intergenerational nature of supporting one another. And interestingly enough, I mean, I think it starts where we have childcare centers. And we have a lot of people who can't afford childcare centers. And so what are they doing? And I guess the same thing on the senior care centers. And what are we doing there? I mean, we haven't figured out housing for people who don't have a lot of funding. And as families are spread out all over the place, it's becoming incredibly problematic.
I'm wondering if on some level, like maybe we're not even aware that we think this, but kids are an investment in our future.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a 95-year-old man,
what are you going to do? Well, he can't do a whole lot. And it's like, okay. Well, what can we learn from being with him then? Maybe we have something to learn. Maybe it's not what he can actively do. It's what his being present in our life does for us. What does it allow us to recognize and do? Where do we have a relationship? We form relationships with kids. Well, some people do. Some people don't want them. Some people don't like them. But when we get in relationships with kids, there's kind of a fun curiosity part about them learning things and doing things. And we don't seem to have that same, well, some of us do. I mean, obviously you and I do. We really are curious about the people who've lived before us and their experiences and what they can bring to my life, because I can be changed by interacting with someone, and I have been. I mean, that's why I do what I do, is I've been changed and changed and changed. I can never be on the road I'm on without having the people who put me on that road and shaped my travel. And I like to think of myself as a fairly productive and effective person in the world. And I wouldn't be that way without the seniors who got me here.
Speaking of on the road, you've been to many other countries. Is there one particular country or a couple of countries that you think are doing a better job or a much better job, or hey, these guys are on the right track? Is there one that we can look at and go, damn, we should?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good question, Greg. I would say there's even one state, Hawaii, has shown a greater concern for their seniors and their kids in healthy ways, in family, in the sense of family, bringing people together into like what we consider to be community. There are some locations, and I wouldn't say a whole country, but locations in Wales that are certainly bringing elders into relationship with other elders, with youngers, with kids, with adolescents. It's happening to some extent in the Netherlands. It's not humongous, it's not the whole country, but they're examples of the possibilities. In Japan, it used to be a model, but then came technology and the push for the fastest, best, brightest, and the emphasis on getting your children in the right places, doing the right things, and moving it forward. And now elders are, although they're respected, they are not necessarily seen in the same way they were 25 years ago. And the same in China, and the same in many places. So it's quite interesting. Sometimes it might be the spiritual group. So like Ishmaeli is an example of a faith-based group that really reveres and respects its elders, and believes elders have so much to bring. And so they become the volunteers or the people who work within to help the next generation. It's very interesting you asked that, Greg, now that I'm thinking, because then we add dementia on top of it, and people are like, oh yeah, well, I mean, they're not themselves. And it's like, yeah, they are. You're just not trained to look. So, wow, you're missing so many roads that you could travel because, who knows but what someday you're going to be there. And you haven't had any experience on the other side of the coin. So boy, it's going to be tough for you. You won't even know what it feels like on this side, let alone the other.
What role can other people play in this? Because obviously we need to keep this in the public eye. We need to sort of show the politicians that what we're doing isn't working. And it's not just our country, it's yours and everybody else's.
Yeah. I mean, we
How
have
do
a
we
huge
be proactive?
Yeah, I think what we have to do is show them where these things do work, where we move out of the traditional models of isolating seniors, of isolating people living with dementia, of isolating our kids, of isolating different, of neurodiversity being a negative thing. And instead, well, let's bring people together. Now, tell me who in this room has dementia. Tell me who in this room is the oldest person. It's like, you'll get it wrong every time. I guarantee you'll get it wrong every time, because what we recognize is with right environment, right support, things can change dramatically. Even the stress level of carers, we can really take the bite out of dementia. So until people get around to finding cures, there's a way to make this a less painful condition. And for aging, there's a way to make that less painful too. But I think we're going to have to let go of some of our belief about being perfect, and that there's going to be this magic that happens to people, where they will be fit until the day they die. And then they'll just drop on their traces and they'll just be done. It's like, yeah, good luck with that thought. That's not how most of us go. So we've got to figure out how to be with one another, work with one another, and change places.
Teepa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
You've been listening to the Dementia Care Partners podcast, brought to you by Positive Approach to Care. For more information on today's program or other dementia topics, go to teepasnow.com.